Let me poke Ven. He wanted to watch this. So.
All right. Ah, darn it. Darn it to heck.
To heck, you say?
To heck.
I'd rather go to the HFIL, but don't worry about it.
I had my rig set up for mono recording for another project I was working on. I've got to switch it back to multi-track. Ah, much better.
Yeah.
I got more blinking lights.
Sitting all day. Oh, sweet! I have 907 unread work emails. It's gonna be fun coming back on Tuesday. Oh my God! Everything's on fire.
Yeah, but I'm glad I'm not on call this weekend. There's always on holidays that happens.
I'm on call next weekend, so that's. And we got to do the early show for our UK folks next week too.
All right, so let's go ahead and get this thing kicked off. Any questions, comments, concerns, crude remarks before we get started?
Dick ass bitch cunt cocksucker motherfucker. I think I got that out of my system.
Out of your system, good.
Tits ass and mung.
All right. I don't even know how to respond to that.
Good.
What's that? Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, where the whole thing with the rental counter. I want my effing car, and yeah.
Oh man, I haven't seen that movie in easily 20 years.
It still holds up, man. I watched it just recently.
It's Steve Martin and Chris Farley. They're pretty, or not Chris Farley, John Candy.
John Candy.
They're pretty funny guys. So.
This is the other dead fat comedian.
Yes, the pre Chris Farley.
Yes. All right, let's do this. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Linux, episode 204. Do Gamers Linux? Recorded September 6th, 2015, and brought to you by Element Opie Productions, elementopie.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Linux show that's not about Linux, but about life in the context of Linux. I am your host, Mark, the Sultan of the Soapbox Cockerel, and joining me this week is your friend and mine, the gooey kid, Mr. Seth Anderson. Hey, Seth, how are you?
Hey, Mark, doing pretty good, and a big shout-out to the faithful Element Opie sticking with us once again.
And the command line godfather is MIA. He got lost somewhere between House A and House B. I think he's fighting with Comcast to get internet access. But we wish him well, and perhaps someday he'll return from the tomb of the unknown soldier. But we do have a true hardcore Linux gamer to replace him, and that is Jordan from the Linux Gamecast. Hey, Jordan, how are you?
I'm feeling rather crappy because I don't have one of those nifty little underbar things.
Oh, the lower third,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't have my lower thirds. I feel naked and unidentified.
Well, you can make that happen. That's right there in the Hangouts. You can make that happen.
Yes, it's. I can get naked right now. Yes,
it's excellent audio commentary for our audio listeners to have the lower third going.
Yes, of course. Where the crap is this? I don't even use it.
Jordan's going to be hanging out with us tonight, and we're going to talk about him, about his show. But first off, we have other random stuff to talk about, because that's what we do here, including the fact that Seth no longer has stinky, dirty clothes.
Yeah, our washing machine went out at my house, and so I had to buy a new one. And, of course, that's fun when you're one person manhandling a washing machine off a truck and into a house. And then through an obstacle course that is our house. But I got it in. It only took me a day, and so I did a load of clothes last night. Woohoo! I can do washing machine.
Yeah, that's exciting. There are 5 people in my house, my wife, myself, my 3 children. Laundry is a never-ending, constant battle. In fact, our washing machine now is making a strange noise that I believe is the bearing, the rotor bearing going out. And it's like, we got to get that fixed. That thing can't be down. It's like
right. See, the trick is to shower with your clothes on, then you clean yourself and your clothes.
It's like if the pump goes out at the sewage plant, before long there's still stuff incoming but nothing outgoing. That's what it's like at our house when the washing machine breaks. So that's a mission critical piece of equipment around my house.
Mm-hmm. Need to teach your kids how to use a washboard, maybe.
Yeah, we do have a stream with some rocks out back. Here's some palm olive, here's a rock. Go do your thing.
Seriously, kids are spoiled these days. They
They
have
are.
no concept of how to manually wash their clothes.
They expect to be fed and have a roof over their head and electricity. Kids today.
Damn
Man,
kids.
humanity.
All right, so that's it. I don't have anything interesting or uninteresting to talk about this week, other than I did mention last week I was reading the Seven Eves book by Neil Stephenson. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago I mentioned it. I'm still it's a 30-hour audiobook, so I'm still into it. But I'm not super familiar with Neil Stephenson's work, but
I've read Snow Crash. I think that's the only one I bought from him, and I also have Cryptonomicon sitting on my shelf. Or no, it was Diamond Age sitting on my shelf. I haven't gotten around to reading that yet.
So I'm pretty sure that it's not uncommon for his books to take a hard right turn into the weird, and this one did it at hour 20-ish of 30.
Yeah.
It just went way hard right turn.
That seems a bit slow for Neil Stephenson, considering the main character in Snow Crash is a dude called Hero Protagonist. So.
Yeah. But it's still an interesting book, just maybe a little more interesting than I had bargained for.
Yeah, Stevenson's stuff usually goes into some weird places. That's why I like it, though.
Yeah, I'm much more into I'm more into the hard science and history sort of stuff. Sci-fi is fine. I'm not into fantasy, and this book took the turn from sci-fi to fantasy. And I'm not sure I'm ready to go on that ride, but I'm gonna do it, and we'll see what happens. I'll let you know when I finish with it, probably this week.
But
Sure.
you know what happens next month, Mark? The Martian.
Yeah, it comes out next month?
It comes out in October.
Oh, cool.
When will people learn? Stop sending Matt Damon into space. It just ends
Bad
poorly.
things happen. Yeah. So this is like Born on Mars.
No. The premise of the book was this guy gets trapped on Mars and he has to use science to.
Yeah, we've talked about the book
survive.
a lot on the show. It's actually one of my favorite books ever.
Well then, shows what I know.
Seth enjoyed the book, hated the audiobook. I love the audiobook and haven't read the actual paper or even Kindle thing. Just, reading. It's so 20th century.
Sure.
All right, let's move on to some feedback from our listeners. Let you guys talk to us. Hussein gets all philosophical on us. And I just got to say, there's a little bit of a mind-blown moment where a fellow named Hussein starts his email with howdy. Just the paradigms are clashing in my brain, but I'm going to go with it.
Well, clearly you never lived in Alberta, so.
He says, howdy, I was listening to y'all talk about whether white hacking is morally right or not. I just wanted to add to this discussion. Obviously, white hacking is illegal, but that's beside the point. Mark and Seth disagree on the subject because Mark holds to the duty ethics with respect to the issue. He believes that one cannot violate the rule, you shall not touch that which is not yours, without permission, so white hacking is wrong. Seth, on the other hand, believes in unilateralism with respect to the issue. White hacking probably produces good results overall, so it's right. Both views are very suspicious, and I think both are false ethical theories. But in order to resolve this issue, we have to agree first what ethical theory is true, or at least which ethical theory should be considered. Disagreement on ethical theory surely can result in disagreement in ethical duties. I have no idea which side is right. I believe in a theistic ethical theory, divine command theory in particular, and it gives no clear direction on which is right. I feel I want to say more, but now I got my bacon finally. I want to enjoy it. Hussein. I don't even know how to respond to that, really, because there was lots of stuff in there that I'm not smart enough to
There is that last third of the email kind of went into its own direction. I don't think any schools of theism have any thoughts on InfoSec.
That was a Neil Stephenson email. It started out slow, and then it took a hard right turn about 2/3 of the way through.
No, that would imply some level of quality, maybe. I don't know.
I did appreciate the bacon mention, so I hope you enjoy the bacon. And you got to do better, Hussein. How was it? Regular bacon, or did you have it to go with something? You can't leave us hanging with. But now I've got my bacon.
Or was it pea bacon? Or just regular, or
See,
regular side bacon.
That's another thing that's I know I'm showing my racism, but a guy named Hussein talking about bacon, it's really blowing my mind. I'm
That's
sorry.
that's not racism, but more
No, that's
jingoism.
profiling, Mark.
Yeah, there it is, racial profiling. I did want to
No,
say,
no,
though,
it's not a race thing. But anyways, go on.
I did want to say that my maybe I misrepresented my stance on white hacking and vigilantism. I think those two are combined. I didn't really intend to go into which is right or which is wrong. My point has been and always will be that if you violate the law, you should be prepared to face the penalty for having violated that law, whether it's a right thing or a wrong thing. We've talked about the definition, but the distinction between ethical and legal many times in the past on this Linux show. But the idea that, particularly in the white hacking thing, was if you are hacking, even if you were doing it for noble reasons, if you're breaking the law, you can't moan and complain about having to face the penalty for having broken the law. Because you broke the law.
I mean, there's ultimately the statement as well that states defiance of breaking an unjust law because it is unjust is the highest legal duty you can perform. I don't know. Disclosure in InfoSec is a very complicated topic. There are multiple schools of thought about it, but ultimately, any philosophy you have to adopt has to effectively nix the issue that's being exposed. I mean, I can find a vulnerability in a piece of software, and the actions I take should benefit the greatest number of people. At the same time, there should be an opportunity for the corporation or company in question to patch their software before the vulnerability goes public. But at the same time, users should be able to protect themselves. It's an interesting balance, and it's probably a podcast in and of itself. So,
it's actually been the context of several podcasts around here. But yeah, that's what the things that we do on Everyday Linux is talk about about politics and ethics. But yeah, I do think
no Linux though.
Occasionally, we do mention Linux. Right up front in the title, we mention Linux.
That counts. That's the one time. Sure.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Jordan had no idea what he was getting into. He was like, sure, I'll do a podcast.
I had every idea what I was getting into. You think I had to do my homework? I pity you folks. But I'll wait till we get to the meat of the discussion for this week. You have another email, though.
I do. I have another email from Rick, who reminds us that you can also get
Rick.
Old used junk on Amazon. It says, you mentioned on a recent show that when you look for new things, you look on Amazon, and when you want used things, you go to eBay. I would also encourage you to check for used items on Amazon. I found a lot of good deals where private sellers sell used items at a fraction of the new price. I've even sold a couple of things there myself. Works great. Okay. Duly noted. And then he continues on. Also, I have a question and a comment about your cold coffee setup. First of all, you mentioned that you're using suction to pull the coffee through your filter bed. At one time, you were having problems with this causing your receptacle to collapse under the pressure. Is there a reason you chose to use negative pressure to pull the coffee through rather than positive pressure on the other side to push it through? Yes, there is. In my experimentation, suction was less violent than pressure. And as I mentioned previously, my setup, the goal is to keep the tannins and the acids in the beans and pull the oils and the flavors out. And pressure seemed to express the things I didn't want more than suction does. So it was considered, it was experimented on, it was discarded. And then he goes on to say, and finally, you mentioned putting your coffee in glass versus plastic. One thing to protect against in addition to oxygen is light, especially in clear glass. There's a reason that good beer is bottled in brown bottles. It blocks out the light better, especially the ultraviolet. That's also one reason why beer in green bottles, you know the brands, often have a skunky taste. Personally, being the lazy guy that I am, I brew my beer directly into the same type of Cornelius keg that you use for your coffee. Less cleanup, no bottling, and you can serve any quantity you want without waste. Happy brewing. Well, while I don't disagree with the whole light thing, I keep my coffee in a refrigerator and the light's off, so it's both cold and dark. So I imagine I could have it in anything, and it wouldn't really matter much there. Okay, moving on along.
Nothing to say on that. Yeah. Captain Haddock has some chips for you, though.
A long-running theme of this show has been my quest to brew the perfect cup of coffee.
You should go to what's his name from Breaking Bad.
Heisenberg.
No, his Gale, that was his name.
Yeah, I literally never saw a single episode of that show. I told you, I'm so out of touch.
Why are you recording a podcast? You should go watch Breaking Bad. That's important.
Here's the reason, and I'll tell you, because the title of the show tells you right at the beginning that a guy who isn't bad is going to turn bad. I didn't want to invest several seasons of my life, several years of my life, in a guy that I knew I was going to end up hating at the end. So
but you don't end up hitting them, and he doesn't turn bad. You just see it. It is very much a story of how the path to hell is paved with good intentions, and it's just marvelous to watch that journey.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's excellent. I just haven't checked it out, and maybe someday I will. It took me 5 years after the show was canceled to watch Battlestar Galactica, so I also haven't seen a single episode of Mr. Robot, which I understand is stunning. I just haven't seen any of it.
Yeah, it wrapped up too. So if you want to binge that, that's not as good a time as any.
Yeah, the first episode was good, but the second episode was and I didn't finish the third one. So.
Oh, then you're missing out. But this Utopia thing sounds like a thing, doesn't it?
Before we do that, Chris has let me know via Skype that he would like to join the conversation. So I'm going to bring him in, and we'll just see what happens on his makeshift, somewhere on a raft in the Pacific, is Chris, the command line godfather of the Neves. Hey, Chris.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you guys doing tonight?
So far,
pretty good.
Well, how are things? How are you making it?
Slowly right now. And I'm having a great error message on my Audacity, so I'm not going to be able to record tonight.
Okay, we'll just make it work. So the disembodied voice from beyond that you hear is our very own Chris Neves. So you're I told the guys at the audience that you were in the middle of moving. How is that going? Have you relocated your stuff?
Yes, everything has been moved to the new house. The old renter, the rental is no longer under our control. We have moved into the new place. After fighting with my service provider for internet, I switched to a new one, and I just got it set up like maybe an hour ago.
All right. So we're not sure how stable he will be or how long he'll be with us, but we're going to enjoy his presence while he's here. We're halfway through our listener feedback, so we got one last email from Captain Haddock, who's been a bit of a perennial commenter recently. He says, "Hey, Mark, based off your statements on the topic of is the internet a failed utopia, I thought you would enjoy listening to a recent episode of the Awesome Truth podcast, which produces, quote, movies for your ears. This specific episode, linked below, and if I remember, I'll put the links in the notes, is called The Last Job and is set in a utopia where work isn't necessary. But the plot takes a turn and you discover that a utopia of no leisure will ever exist. Pretty much any utopia, for that matter. Cheers, Captain Haddock. P.S. Love the show. Love Linux. Don't agree with RMS. Love your political/theological views and willingness to speak your mind in this day and age. Frankly, we need more people like you. Keep it up, mate." That right there is actually the whole reason his comment is in here. I get so many people abusing me. I wanted some praise, and so the whole other part about the other part. Sure, if you want to go listen to the Awesome Truth podcast, that's great.
You got to embrace the abuse, man. Yeah, if you remove the fangs, it ceases to be a weapon and starts to be something that you can turn into content. That's what Linux Gamecast does. That's worked out. I think. I don't know. Maybe.
So, one of the things I like to do on this show, and frankly we don't do enough, is talk about other podcasts, because we're all one big community here. And I've never heard of the Awesome Truth podcast, but now that Captain Haddock has brought it to my attention, I will go check it out, and I encourage you to do so too.
All right. So what's on the docket next?
So the next thing that I have to do, because they pay me to, is talk about LinuxAcademy.com. Very briefly, because we're known for our very short commercials around here, I'll tell you about our friends. Wow, I just totally blanked on his name. Anthony, thank you. My friend Anthony, who he started here, his journey. We did an interview with him because we thought his product was interesting, and his business has sort of grown with our podcast, and over time he's become a sponsor. We're big fans, so we put those two things together, and I tell you about Linux Academy, where you can learn how to be a Linux administrator, or at least gain the skills to be a Linux administrator by using their step-by-step video courses. This is far beyond just YouTube lessons out there. You can get those anywhere. i.e. YouTube. But what makes Linux Academy special is not only that their content is first-rate, high-quality, independently certified by third parties as first-rate and high-quality, but it ties in an entire ecosystem of learning. With those videos are the downloadable PDF study guides, the practice exams, the learning guide where you can say, I want to be here, I want to take this course, I have 3 hours every second Thursday to do it. It'll build your syllabus for you, it'll email you, let you know today you need to do this, you need to take these exams, and it'll keep you on track, just like your mother would if you were at home going through to college. It's sort of a college in a box, linuxacademy.com. Well over 200 videos now, and they've branched out far beyond just Linux. You can learn Linux there, but you can also learn Ruby on Rails. You can learn Amazon Web Services. You can learn, I'm just extemporizing because I can't remember off the top of my head. They've expanded in so many different directions, but their core is still Linux. It's built right into the name, linuxacademy.com. So check them out and let them know what you think. The content you get there, as I've just expounded on, is really high quality, but the price is peanuts, $25 a month. In fact, that's the most that you can pay, $25 a month. That gives you access to the videos, that gives you access to the study guides, that gives you access to these amazing virtual lab setup where you can have up to 4 virtual machines running simultaneously, interacting with each other in a safe and practical environment to blow stuff up and learn from it. But if you, like anything else, like bacon or donuts or eggs, the more you buy, the less you pay. So if you want to buy 3 months at a time, that's a quarter, that's $65, $10 discount right there. If you buy a year, it's $18 and change a month, brings out to $215 annually. So check it out for $25, see what you think. If you don't like it, walk away. In fact, I've said on this show before, and I'll say it again, if you don't like it, let me know. I'll send you your $25 back. I believe in them that much. Now, be honest about it. I'm trusting you not to be a jerk and just try to rook me out of some money. But
yeah, I was going to say, can I have $25?
Sure. If you try the content for a month and you don't like it, I'll put my money where their mouth is. I believe in them that much. But the reason I'm so confident of that is because I've used the stuff. Seth has used the stuff. He's a paying customer of it. Not only they're a sponsor of the show, but he's a customer. And I get email time after time again from people saying, this is exactly what I was looking for. So check them out, linuxacademy.com. If you use the Linux, if you go to use the code EverydayLinux or go to linuxacademy.com/everydaylinux, either one works, you get a special discount. So even the prices I just told you are total BS because you won't pay that much if you use that code. linuxacademy.com, check them out.
You know, and I just want to throw in on that, Mark, that the Linux Foundation did their kind of 2015 job reports, and they found that 9 in 10 hiring managers are planning to bring Linux talent on board, and 50% are reporting they're going to hire more Linux professionals than last year. So the need is out there. You know, if you and the need is so great that you don't have to demonstrate expert status, you have to demonstrate competency, and then you can really get on the job training in a lot of cases to grow with the job. So the Linux Academy, if you want to get into IT or if you want to get into better IT position, can be a great avenue for your advancement.
All right.
I don't know. As someone who occasionally interviews employees, I like seeing people with hands-on experience. So make of that what you will. But that was a short commercial. Yeah. So what's next?
So next is you, where we talk about Linux, the state of gaming on Linux, and you are a resident expert, Jordan, on those sort of things. But before we go into that whole Linux thing, tell us a little bit about you. Who is Jordan? What do you do? Why should we care?
My name is Jordan Sfung. You can find me at The Burning Fool on Twitter. I am a co-host on Linux Gamecast Weekly, the show that covers Linux gaming news, reviews, how-tos, and whatever the hell else we come up with, as our lovely technical director, Ven, would say. And yeah, we talk about Linux gaming news. We're on the more technical side of things. A lot of our audience are game developers, and actually one of the cooler people we have in our audience is Aaron Plattner, the head of driver development at NVIDIA, which was kind of neat finding out that he's a fan of the show. Like a bit of my history, I was basically involved with the Fedora project for a number of years. I contributed to their Raspberry Pi operating system. I helped bootstrap the ARMv7 HL ARM architecture, and I've been working in Linux since I was maybe 16, 17, so yeah.
Very cool.
Which was, what, about 5 years? You look like you're a baby.
Possibly. I'm only 26, so it's a little more than 5 years.
So you've got some real technical cred there, and obviously a love of Linux. So when we talk about gaming on Linux, one of my contentions all along, and you can set me straight if I'm wrong, is that there really is almost no such thing as gaming on Linux. It's gaming on Windows, where you use Wine or something like it to run it sort of kind of kludgily on Linux.
Well, that is a very, very overly simplified view of it, and that was really only maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And even then, like Wine exists to scratch an itch, because for those of you who don't know, Wine is just an implementation of the Win32 API in Linux. It basically takes the instructions that you would submit to the Windows operating system and translates them to Linux. So it's really meant for running more than just games, like Photoshop or any number of other productivity tools. And Wine is great when you have when you want to actually play games that will never get ported. But for the longest time, there has actually been effort to put games on Linux. Back in the early Aughties, as the hipster folks say, there was this little company called Loki Games that published a bunch of games under Linux. They went under, though. Even before Steam got on the Linux bandwagon, stores like Greenhouse and Humble were selling Linux versions of their games. That's not even mentioning the panoply of open source games that exist in complete engine re-implementations. Like, you might have heard of something called Open Morrowind.
Sure.
No.
I'm seeing the eyes glazed over deer caught in headlights. No, if you ever heard of this game, it's the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, and a group of completely insane people have taken it upon themselves to entirely rewrite the engine so that you can just drop the Windows game assets and play it on basically anything. So I mean,
that's pretty cool.
Is that I preface this by saying I'm not a gamer, so if I'm wrong, smack me down. But what I know certainly from the Humble Bundle, and my guess is going to be about Greenhouse Games as well, is these are not AAA first run modern titles. They're either ports of older games or they're small games.
Not necessarily. There are a lot of indies that actually put out Linux clients for their games, but Humble has been. Well, earlier on, they contributed to porting some bigger games over to Linux. I think they were involved to some degree, and I could very well be wrong with that. Ben's going to be shouting at me on Google+. But I think they were involved with the Shadow Warrior port. One of the guys they recently got to port games, Ethan Lee, otherwise known as Flibbity Jibbity Shibbida Babadaboo. He's been on Warpath, basically creating a toolset called FNA that allows you to take games developed for Xbox Live Arcade and just run them on any platform because it's all SDL2 based. Sorry, what was the question again? I got a bit sidetracked.
AAA games versus
AAA games. I mean, like, AAA games existed on Linux for a while. Doom was probably one of the first AAA games ever to come with Linux. Quake shortly after that. The number of Loki ports actually fairly early on, and even then, now we're getting stuff like Shadow Warrior. Feral is putting out Company of Heroes, which we had some issues with last week. If you want to know about that, you should check out linuxgamecast.com because I got to plug our crap.
No, you can't. You can't do that, man.
Screw you. I do what I want. I'm taking over this show now. Welcome back to the Jordan Show. There are Borderlands getting ported by Aspire Civilization. There are a lot of AAA games coming to Linux, or more specifically SteamOS, Valve's own particular distribution. So it's not just indie games. It has been for a while, but it's getting better and better and better as more companies get on board. So
are these first run games, or is it like Netflix? You got to wait a while.
It depends. Some games will release same day. Borderlands, the pre-sequel, which was a pretty big deal, released on all platforms simultaneously. Huge props to the folks at Aspire for pulling that one out of their butts. Hell, they even got cross-platform multiplayer working on day one. I pulled that port up as like the Linux game that's the bar that everything is compared to. XCOM got ported. That was a little after the fact, though. We're catching up. Feral is releasing. Well, they're working on Batman: Arkham Asylum. Not Arkham Asylum. Arkham Knight. That was the one. Oh God, there's some other person who joined the Hangout. My God. It's hideous. Dear Lord.
Trying.
So
I-
these games, when you get a first run day one AAA game, is it the same experience as you would get on a console or on Windows? Let's even throw the console out and just compare it to.
I would arguably say, yeah, for sure better than a console. The main problem, though, is that OpenGL, which is the 3D language that folks like macOS and Linux use, as opposed to DirectX, even though I'll probably get into that a little later, you can technically get DirectX working under Linux. It requires a bit of doing. But I mean, for the most part, you'll get equivalent performance if the port is done correctly. There are a number of ports, or a number of types of ports you have to deal with. There's the one that's sort of thrown together after the fact. You got the ones wrapped in stuff like Wine or Eon, and then you have the games that were actually developed with a cross-platform toolset in mind. And those games will usually have very, very functional Linux ports out on day one.
So let's talk about the role that Steam plays in this. You've mentioned them a couple of times already. They seem to be
Yes.
the way to play Linux games. The cross-platform for sliders.
Well,
as people say.
they certainly have the market presence, and the fact that if you've bought games on Windows through Steam, that all of a sudden get a Linux client, you can play your games. So Steam is certainly the elephant in the room. Some of the things they've done are not truly healthy for Linux gaming. They've made a couple missteps, in my opinion, that could have brought a couple more people to the platform than currently. Number one is just like the sheer lack of promotion of Steam Machine hardware. This stuff's supposed to be coming out in November, and the hype train has not been going. In fact, there's quite a lot of misinformation.
That's
about their...
the Steam Machine is it's a device that runs on Linux. That they're supposedly positioning as the cornerstone of the company, but like you, there's sort of been radio silence about this.
It's never going to be the cornerstone of the company. The cornerstone of the company is Dota and TF2. If Valve makes their money by buying and selling hats from players in these games, Steam Machines is a way for them to have a platform that they can control. The whole impetus for actually Steam focusing on Linux was back when Windows 8 was coming out, that Microsoft was making a big deal about the Windows Store. And so Valve said, well, we don't want to actually have to compete with Microsoft on their own turf. We should have a platform that we control, that we can publish games on, and that's where the whole idea of SteamOS came from.
All right.
Yeah.
So
sorry,
if I'm going to build a rig, so again, take it from a non-gamer point of view. Do I need more power, less power, the same? Can I run Windows games and Linux games on the same hardware with the same experience?
See, and that gets into a bit of a sticky thing. If you have an AMD card, no. Go spend your money on an NVIDIA card. I mean, for the most part, though, I got sidetracked. I was going to bring that up, but OpenGL is the big problem point for a lot of Linux games, because a lot of computer science folks, when they learn 3D libraries and they learn how to write 3D games, they do it in DirectX. DirectX is made for like multimedia applications. OpenGL is actually made for scientific simulations, like medical stuff, ray tracing. So, and it's built with a certain architecture in mind that doesn't necessarily have shared GPU, CPU, memory, and so on and so forth. So, a lot of developers who are bringing their game to Linux have a lot of trouble with OpenGL, and as such, do not produce the same quality OpenGL code that you would have DirectX code on the Windows game. So there's going to be a bit of a performance disparity. But a couple of years ago, Valve actually put out the results of something they did where they ported their source engine to Linux and to OpenGL, and they found that with optimized OpenGL code, you will outperform DirectX pretty much all the time by a significant margin. Yep. But again, that requires optimized code, which, I mean, game developers, they do a good job, but at the same time, they're trying to push a product out under a deadline. They're not 100% focused on creating optimized and good quality code. And that honestly does hurt the performance of a lot of Linux games, which is why you'll see giant gulfs. Take Shadow of Mordor, for instance.
All right, tell me about Shadow of Mordor.
Shadow of Mordor. There are a lot of the ultra setting in Linux just does not work. The features in the DirectX version are more feature complete than the Linux version done in OpenGL. And I mean, the guys at Feral did their damnedest, and they did a pretty good job. The game is fairly playable, no crashes or anything like that. It's just a matter of if you take someone from their Windows PC and you say, hey, check out this awesome crap on Linux, and then you show them like the frame rates and the draw times, it's going to be a bit worse. But ultimately, like properly written and optimized code for Linux will outperform properly written and optimized code for Windows. That's just...
All right. So, guys, I have been totally monopolizing the conversation. What do you have to say and/or ask of our illustrious guest?
Illustrious, sure. That's the word you want to use to describe it. All right.
Well, that is, Mark using big words.
Sure.
So, Chris, you are the gamer. Take it away.
Oh, you're going to throw it on me, huh? So,
yeah,
pretty much.
Bring it on, Cupcake.
Ooh. No, I just, it's, I've been listening to your show for a while now, and it's a great show, but I wonder, a lot of times you guys do shows and you throw your chairs, and you guys have higher specs than a lot of people that I hear playing,
Yes.
Linux games. Is there a reason why you use such high-end, or I shouldn't say all of them are high-end, but the latest ones have been fairly high-end graphics cards?
That's true. Well, one of the main reasons behind that is both them and I have 4K displays, and you cannot push that with a little rinky-dinky video card. I actually like gaming at 4K. Everything looks all wonderful. When I have to record footage for Linux Gamecast and I drop everything back down to 1080p, it looks hideous. So I'm spoiled.
So yeah,
but
you play
time,
a game in 4K for a while, and then you walk outside and you're thinking, that looks washed out and dull.
No, it's about the same. Honestly, the specs being high is a bit of a concern. That was my main issue when Pedro went and got his new computer. We had his laptop, which was quite frankly a piece of garbage. But it's a good test to see if your game will run on something with bare minimum specs. I actually have a Steambox in the other room that's AMD based that I occasionally test games on. But really, what we want to do is we want to see how the game shines when you throw massive amounts of hardware at it. What can the engine actually do? Let's push the port to its limit and see what kind of information we can draw. Now, I do agree there is some benefit with having lower spec systems, but we're cooking something up that we can't talk about it right away, but it should be interesting on that regard, or in regards to that.
That's what you call a big market tease right there. Nicely done.
That
sir.
it was. That was a very good market tease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stay tuned. More information's coming down the pipe. LinuxGamecast.com.
So if I tune in, yes, because it's 1940 and I'm turning a knob on a TV set. If I download Linux Gamecast, what can I expect out of your show?
Horribleness and profanity, the likes of which you have never seen. If you're somewhat of a clean-cut gentleman, you may in fact turn to stone. That's entirely Ben's fault. We talk a lot about the finer points of Linux gaming. We talk about the news and the politics and whatnot. It'll go over a lot of people's heads, but we determined a long time ago we're not going after the casual audience. We're going after the people who know what they're talking about and the people who are actually able to affect change. So
there you go. Yeah, that's what your cast sounds like. Whenever I listen to it, it sounds like you guys are pushing all the developers to not just put out a crappy port, but
it really is a problem. Yeah. One of the latest kerfuffles we were talking about on this week's show, Arma 3, they recently put out a Linux port, which was actually just an Eon wrapped. For those of you who aren't aware, a couple games right now in the Steam library, BioShock Infinite, Spec Ops: The Line, The Witcher 2, were ported by use of something called Eon, which is a wrapper that translates. It's kind of like a proprietary wine where it'll translate DirectX calls or Direct3D calls to OpenGL. The problem is it's very heavily optimized for NVIDIA GPUs and Intel CPUs. So, and it also drives the memory requirements up significantly as well. So these guys, Arma, they put out a port and they said this is a courtesy for our Windows users who actually want to test this on Linux. And that's not a good mentality to have. This is, can we get away with this? Are people willing to swallow our garbage? And unfortunately, a lot of the community seems to be more than willing to take inferior quality ports under the auspices of, hey, at least we get something. And
well, it's still garbage. They should actually.
it's still garbage. One of the huge things I try to bring up is that while we do have a lot of powerful systems on Linux Gamecast, the average like GPU that the Steam Hardware Survey reports is like an Intel HD 4000. That only currently under Linux that only supports OpenGL 3.1 or 3.3 actually until the fine folks at Mesa get off their keisters and actually finish OpenGL 4.2 compatibility for the Intel GPU. So you have you're having a lot of gamers who can't actually play your games because not everyone has. Honestly, like a lot of the people I know who play video games are college students. They have their laptop that they bought for $400 to do their schoolwork, and they want to play some games. As it currently stands, the environment of Linux gaming, a lot of these games cannot be played, or a lot of these more expensive games cannot be played. Indie games, sure, who cares? You can run them on like a Raspberry Pi.
So there have been some at like streaming games like that for people with a low-end laptop to have a high-end experience.
Well,
those have all come and gone, I'm assuming, because they can't make any money off of it. Would you have any experience with those sort of things?
That is an entirely different thing altogether. Game streaming is something that Valve has put together in the interim to fill the gap between their Linux/CMOS and Windows catalogs. With the idea of if I can have a Windows computer somewhere on the network, I can play the game on there and stream the output to another computer running Steam, which could be a Linux computer or another Windows computer.
No, that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about I can't remember the name of it right now. It was like OnStream, like, something like that. They have a server, and you've got a.
You're thinking of OnLive.
That's it. Yeah, you've got an RDP session into their machine, and with all the lag and all that awesome stuff that goes with it.
Not really RDP. RDP would be entirely unfeasible for gaming. Hell, like even what Steam has is essentially nothing more than hardware accelerated VNC that they bought from NVIDIA. That's the same stuff that lets you stream games to your Shield tablet.
Right. It's kind of like a SPICE protocol.
A little bit, yeah. But I mean that is a solution. But
it's a solution that's gone out of business, so it's not a good solution.
It's not really a good solution, mainly because internet in the United States, where this company is based, is crap. You guys.
But at least we pay a lot for it. So
not as much as Canada. My God, you guys have it so easy, so easy. It sucks up here. Thanks, Obama.
Yeah, that's his fault, I'm sure, somehow. Right.
Yeah. No, it's George Bush's fault. Obama hasn't gotten around to fix it yet. Let's be right in our bashing.
Sure.
So you said you told us a little bit about the show. What is your target audience? Now you said you're trying to call the developers on the carpet, but they're not your core audience, are they? They're not who you're talking to. Who's your audience for your show?
Our core audience are like people who grew up using Linux and like playing video games. I mean, the download statistic I like to parrot that's already like several months old is we get 20,000 uniques per episode, which is pretty good. So we're reaching some people, and it seems to be a lot of technically inclined people, sysadmins, programmers, people who actually have a legitimate interest in Linux and gaming on Linux. So
it sounds like we need to drink and curse more, and then we'll have a bigger audience. So
maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. You can also try getting naked. That might work.
Or maybe just talk about Linux once in a while. Maybe that would help.
Well, that's why you brought me on, isn't that right?
Yes. Once every few months, we bring on a guest who actually mentions Linux.
Yes, actually,
at least once in a while.
Indeed. So, what else did you guys want to talk about? I jotted down some notes in your little document.
So I had just sort of three categories there. You've already hit some of those, but hit the good, bad, and the ugly of gaming on Linux right now. Not just companies, but in terms of experience. What am I going to run into if I go build a machine and start gaming on Linux? What are things that I need to make sure I beeline for? What are things that are okay, and what things should I totally stay away from?
All right. Well, if you want to build yourself a computer to run Linux and play games, pretty much the main requirement is at least 8 gigabytes of RAM and a NVIDIA GPU. Because if you have an AMD card, your shit is not going to work 100%. Now, I'm actually going to get into that on. The driver situation on Linux is sort of a mixed bag. The open source drivers, Mesa, which is the open source implementation of OpenGL, is making some significant progress. They've recently added complete support for OpenGL 4.2 to the core of the system. The individual drivers are not there yet. But the proprietary drivers AMDs are just complete garbage. Do not use them unless you're running some ancient kernel. Do not.
Well, let's talk about that. What is there a preferred distro for gaming? Is one significantly better than the other?
So ultimately it's all Linux, and Steam ships with something called the Steam Runtime, which helps mitigate that significantly. The idea is the core set of libraries taken from SteamOS, which is a spin of Debian unstable with a newer version of the standard C library, and I believe it's the 3.10 kernel. Well, all those packages are included with Steam, and the idea is you link against those, and then the disparities between individual distributions libraries should go away. That's not 100% true, but Steam currently recommends Ubuntu 14.04. If you want to take the plunge on SteamOS, you can. It's currently in beta, and you're not going to have the full panoply of software you would in a standard Linux desktop. Because one of the big pieces of misinformation about SteamOS is, it's just supposed to be like for regular computers. No, it is a TiVoized device. You guys familiar with the concept of TiVoization?
Mm-hmm. But let's assume the audience isn't. Explain it.
Yes, well, I was going to get into that. TiVoization is basically you build up a product that is sufficiently abstracted from the user so that they don't know what's actually running on it. For example, the TiVo, everyone loves TiVo, it runs Linux. It's been running Linux for years. Most people have been using it with no idea. Same thing with Android. Oh yeah, this is great. It's a smartphone that's not an iPhone. Yeah, well, it's a TiVoized phone. It's running the Linux kernel that has its ART runtime or whatever the hell they call it these days, and applications run on top of that. SteamOS is specifically for you build a computer that is going to be dedicated as a console / somewhat media device. They've actually gotten around to adding proper codec support for the Steam audio player, so it can actually play your music for the most part. That was a big thing, because before then it was essentially useless to play like MP3s, and that was really it. But any reasonably modern, up-to-date distribution will work fine. And if you want to dig a bit more in that, you can actually remove certain libraries from the Steam runtime and default to your distribution state of libraries to increase performance to some degree, because there are optimizations that packaging maintainers thrown in. So,
what do you run? What's your rig?
So I run my CPU is old as balls. I have an AMD 1090T, which is a hex core Thuban processor running at 3.2 that I really need to get off my ass and overclock. I got an NVIDIA GTX 980, 8 gigs of RAM, about 1.5 terabytes of solid state drive, and yeah, that's my system. And I'll pump it out to a 4K monitor.
So just a little off the shelf unit.
Oh no! You go to Best Buy, you pick that up for maybe $20, and you're good to go.
Awesome. So could I run Steam on a Raspberry Pi? Because it really sounds like you don't have much hardware.
Well, actually, no, you can't, because Steam is a 32-bit i6 or i686 executable, which is entirely incompatible with the ARMv7 or ARMv6 instruction set that the Raspberry Pi is running.
Yeah, you guys don't have sarcasm on your show.
No, I just like spouting jargon at you folks.
Awesome,
that works. So which distros are you guys running at your show?
Pedro and I are running some variant of Fedora. Ben is running Ubuntu. I like Fedora. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for beginners. I used to develop for it. I used to be a paid contributor to it. That is the particular Linux that I am most familiar with. But yeah, no. As much as it pains me to recommend it, I'd probably go with Ubuntu for or one of the Ubuntu variants like Kubuntu or Xubuntu, instead of just the default Unity mess that Shuttleworth is trying to cram down our throats lately.
Yeah, not so much lately. He's pretty dedicated to it.
It's pretty much a guarantee.
Oh my God, there's so much crap going on with Canonical. Again, that could fill its own podcast. Matt Garrett, one of the kernel developers, already devotes half of his blog to just bashing Canonical. You asked me to talk about the good for Linux gaming, and there is a lot of good stuff on the horizon. It's not necessarily here just yet. One of the big ones is Vulkan, which is the new 3D language.
Let me stop
API.
you real quick. I apologize, but that's the promise of Linux for the last 25 years. It's just over the horizon, but not there yet.
No, you're talking about the Linux desktop.
I'm
Linux
just talking about Linux in general, man. Obviously, on the server, it
it
runs.
is, buddy. It is 100% usable. I use it as my day-to-day driver. Wall Street runs on it, so I mean, it can't be that bad.
Right.
if
No,
major
what I'm talking
policies-
about is from a user experience, right? So the server, Linux owns the server world. We get that. Linux owns
Sure.
essentially all internet hardware. But for the user experience, it's always been just right around the corner. That's what Shuttleworth is trying to do with Unity. He's trying to bring it over the horizon. I think he's wrong, but at least he's committed to it.
I feel like a lot of people say that without having used a modern distribution. That may have been true 10, maybe even 5 years ago, but as it currently stands, Linux is entirely usable. It's just people's resistance to different things. I mean, hell, we had people on Windows XP for like 10 years, 5 years, or 15 years, 5 years after they killed it. And
Still on.
to get people to move on to something new is incredibly challenging, which is why I honestly think the Steam Machine is our best bet, because it's a TOS device. You don't even think that you're running Linux. It is this box that I plugged into my TV that I play games on.
All right, so back to what you were saying here. The best things are just over the horizon.
There are some really cool shit over the horizon. There is some cool stuff currently in existence that people can leverage right now. What you can leverage right now, Unreal 4, Unreal Engine 4 that Epic put out is a basically free open source toolkit that allows you to build high quality like AAA class games. And it supports Linux right out the box. Actually, recently they did something cool. They're supporting ARM builds, so if you can actually build your Unreal game for the Raspberry Pi. That was
Wow.
that is a really cool thing that they recently added to 4.9. I think was the latest release that came out in the past week. And SDL2 is the other big one. SDL2 is it's a really bad analogy, but it's the Linux equivalent of DirectX. Essentially, what it does is it's a library set that handles input, that handles networking, that handles display, and it abstracts everything so that a lot of things just work. There was this great presentation that Ryan C. Gordon, Iculus, for the longest time he was the Linux gaming industry. He had on the Valve Dev Days talks where he was saying this is how you draw a window in DirectX, and it's like this page long of like random code. This is how you do it in STL, and it's like 2 lines. And then he says, oh wait, no, we forgot to add error checking, and it adds 2 more lines. So STL2 is a very, very simple to use, just works framework that you can use for your game that will handle the majority of all controllers. It'll export to stuff like PlayStation 4, PC, Mac, Windows, Linux, or Windows, Mac, because PCs are any personal computers. Your Mac is a personal computer. But the cool current, and even now we have a lot of companies that will actively port your game. There's the dude who ported Shadow Warrior, whose name escapes me at the moment. I probably should have wrote that down in the notes. You got guys like Ryan C. Gordon who will port your game. Ethan Lee, guy Flibajibabo, he will port your game. There are a lot of resources you can leverage right now to actually produce a workable Linux product out on the market with not a lot of effort. Because what a lot of people don't realize is the main thing is when games come to Linux, they're ported after the fact. They're not developed to support multiple platforms from the get-go. They develop it for Windows, or they develop it for PlayStation, or they develop it for Xbox, and then they hand someone else the code and they say, okay, now make this work on these other platforms. That is a bad development methodology. If you take an extra 5 time units to actually design your application to be cross-platform, adding new platforms just becomes trivial because you just compile it and you say, compile it for this platform, compile it for that platform, and you have something workable. And SDL2 does wonders for producing builds like that. But yeah, there's some cool stuff over the horizon. Mainly Vulkan. That is Vulkan and Steam Machines are the big ones. Vulkan is the replacement, or rather the successor to OpenGL. The idea is it's designed much in the same way that your DirectX 12s and your Mantle is, where you basically just start feeding assembly to the GPU. The problem is, the good thing is that it removes a ton of driver overhead. There was this great demo. If you check out Linux Gamecast Weekly this week, we talked about it. On an Intel CPU, where they have the same demo running in OpenGL and Vulkan. Oh man, I'm boring you, aren't I, Mark?
No, I'm just listening. I'm actually enjoying watching you. Looks like you're sitting on a ball. You're bouncing around there.
I am in fact sitting on a ball.
As a fellow ball sitter, I recognize the posture. Yes.
Good. But yeah, no. A lot of the driver overhead is removed with Vulkan. The execution path is really, really short. The demo that I was just talking about, there was an OpenGL application running. There was a single core running at about 100%, and it was running, and it was consuming a lot of power. It wasn't performing that great. And when they switched it to Vulkan, the bottleneck essentially dropped. The work was offloaded across all 4 CPUs. Total power consumption resources went way down, which is all well and good. But that is a controlled demo by Intel people on Intel hardware. The fact of the matter remains that, again, we have to go back to the developers, which is what Linux Gamecast is trying to address. The main problem is Vulkan removes a ton of the execution path from the driver and then says, application, you go handle it. Which means that the people who are actually writing games have to write proper renderers using Vulkan that leverage all these features that will help with performance. And as we've seen in the past, developers seem to have a problem writing optimized code on Linux or on Windows.
So let's talk about that. The tools, there's some on the horizon, but there have been tools available for a while now that let you write smoothly cross-platform code. It may not be super optimized, but it works, and it works solidly across all the platforms. What's the holdup? Why is there so little support for Linux? Is it just a marketing thing? Go ahead.
There is a lot of misinformation about developing on Linux. I think it's a wonderful environment to develop on. There are so many useful tools that basically do your work for you. Which is what Microsoft tries to do with Visual Studio, and they make their developers who learn Visual Studio entirely dependent on that.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I think the tool you were talking about is Unity, which has the ability to export. You can write your game in Windows in .NET, and it'll export it to Mono, which is the open source implementation of .NET, which will run on OS X and Linux. But yeah, no. A lot of the builds that Unity will produce are fairly unoptimized, and again, a lot of developers just say they click export and they put the game on the Steam Marketplace, and it runs like shit because they did not actually take time to QA it or put any work into optimizing it. And then people complain, "Oh, gaming on Linux sucks!" Right? Because the developers aren't doing their goddamn jobs. That's the main problem.
And why aren't they?
Why aren't they? Because they're lazy. Developers are lazy. I work in the software industry. Ben works in the software industry. Pedro works in the software industry. And the one thing we can all agree on is that developers do not like learning new things. They don't like exerting more effort than they actually have to. There was an article in PC World about, you guys know Obsidian, right?
Yes.
Yep.
They recently put out a game called Pillars of Eternity earlier this year, and one of the things the article was going on is, oh, Linux was so hard and blah blah blah. And when people actually interrogated them in the forums, they were talking about, oh, we've never actually installed Linux before. Yeah, so you just go to the store and you buy your Linux computer. No, you build a computer for $500 and throw Ubuntu on it. It's not difficult. There's a lot of resistance, and just because it is sort of this unknown and marketed by other entities as this sort of alien operating system, a lot of people don't want to take the time to learn it. But
there's not a big enough market there to make developers stop being lazy. If Linux gamers were throwing money at them by the billions, they would stop being lazy.
Well, and it's a chicken and the egg scenario. Why should I make games for Linux when no one's buying them? But then the counter argument to that is look at the results from basically any humble sale. Linux users on average pay more for their games, despite the fact that a lot of these bundles don't actually have games for Linux on it. People buy them with the intent of playing them on Wine or just to own them, or if they are dual booting heathens, they might go play them on their Windows partitions. But they still have their purchases tracked as Linux, and Linux users do pay more. There is a desire from the Linux community to have high-quality games, and we're willing to pay for them. The problem is with 1% market share, it's kind of hard to leverage it. But even then, with Steam, 1% of like a couple $100 million is still $1 million. Even if you make $1 off that game, that's still $1 million from your Linux users. That's not something to scoff at.
True.
And again, it comes back to the Steam machines. We need Steam hardware out in the wild so that people can actually play games on Linux, which will incentivize developers and companies to actually produce games for Linux.
The chicken and the egg issue.
Indeed, and companies like Valve and Humble have sort of taken the first steps forward. And I mean, if you look at like Windows 10 right now, a lot of people are dissatisfied with the privacy aspect. A lot of just applications don't work with the new operating system. A lot of people are realizing that Microsoft isn't really the way to go. And in a couple of years, we're gonna see maybe a shift. We don't know where it's gonna go because you can't predict the future. But I mean, you can hope that at least Linux, with outreach programs like the Steam machines, will get some traction.
Well, that means we have to have the actual Steam machines in the market for us to get it. Because didn't we have another couple of delays on the Steam machines being actually sent to market again?
Yeah, and if you actually look at some of the Steam machines on that Valve is advertising, I mean, I personally am not impressed. They're overpriced and underpowered for what you have to pay for them. But again, you're targeting the market of people who buy like Alienware PCs and people who buy consoles. So I don't know. Console price range $500 is kind of cutting it close, and you have these Steam machines for like $700 to $1,000. So I don't know. We're putting a lot of eggs in that basket, and we can hope against hope that it will succeed. But the fact remains, they're not the most desirable bits of hardware. The Steam Link and the Steam Controller, though, are really, really cool, and I can't wait for November to get my mitts on them because they seem like cool pieces of kit.
Yeah, I'm on that list of beta order or early orders.
Oh, Ethan, don't never pre-order. Never pre-order.
Oh, always pre-order.
No, never pre-order because you send the message to the people that I will take
Whatever garbage.
Something. Yeah, I will take the promise of a product over an actual functioning thing, and I could go in with like how Steam refunds are sort of screwed by early access, but that's me monopolizing the conversation. Do you guys have anything you want to talk about or any questions that I can maybe enlighten you about?
Well, I was just what you made me think about the whole pre-order thing. That's another chicken and the egg problem too, right? Steam, Valve, anybody wants to see that there's a market out there first, so they make it available for pre-order, and so they go, okay, we've got X number of people who are willing to do it.
I'm sorry though. In the era of digital distribution, the fact that you have to pre-order something is entirely asinine. Pre-ordering came from when I had to go to my freaking electronic boutique to get a copy of Pokemon.
Okay, so for games, but I'm talking about hardware. So the Steam Machine hardware, you can't digitally download that. You've got to spin up hardware. You've got to do production. So you need to know that there's a market there first.
Yes. That is true, but when you're asking people to put down thousands of dollars as a down payment for the promise of a console, that's you're not going to get too many people biting that hook.
It's sort of it. I think it would be more efficient if a company did more of a Kickstarter thing than Valve trying to pre-order.
Maybe I think Valve just needs to start promoting it more aggressively,
or caring in general.
Yeah, or caring in general. There is something to be said about Valve's apathy and their rather laissez-faire approach to Steam and their products, but that's its own thing.
But even on that thought process, you also have the fact that Steam doesn't advertise much in general.
They really don't. They rely on word of mouth, which works for them. But that again, you're selling Windows games to people who have Windows computers, as opposed to trying to market like actual a piece of hardware, a product to people.
So what about? So we've talked about the hardcore gamer. What about the casual gamer? What's the experience like for just your casual gamer on Linux?
Absolutely fantastic. There are a ton of casual games on Linux, less graphically intensive ones. If you like puzzle games, if you like platformers, if you like some degree of racing games, there's not a lot on Linux, but they do exist. There a lot of indie games just by virtue of them using Unity as their toolset produce a Linux build, and because they're relatively low. They're low quality, not necessarily low quality as in like bad games, but because they have lower system requirements and they're less complex games, they'll run reasonably well just out of the box.
Yeah, I can go crazy with some Frozen Bubble, but that's not exactly a hardcore Linux game.
No. Honestly, the casual game that eats all the casual game that eats all my time is FTL. My God, I'm addicted to that. They have a version of that now that runs in ASM.js in the browser, so you don't even need like an operating system to play FTL. And I made a conscious decision to not buy that because I will enter the bathroom and never leave.
We've just sucked 1 year of your life away.
No. Yeah,
Or
no,
longer.
that all went down the toilet. But yeah, they're as much as like there are cool there's a lot of good in the realm of Linux gaming. There is a lot of bad too, and a lot of it has to do with companies.
Is it
that,
getting better? How long's the podcast been on the air?
So we have been recording. We actually had our 3-year anniversary a couple weeks ago.
So in the 3 years you've been doing the show, have things been markedly better, or have you still been looking for things on the horizon?
Absolutely. When we started, Steam for Linux wasn't a thing. Humble bundles were just starting to get into Linux games, and like we actually have an entire segment of we actually added an entirely new segment of our show when Steam got released, because it's like, holy crap, there's actually games on Linux now. There's a chance. Happy day.
Well, you know what that means? That means you personally can take credit for Steam on Linux. You did it because it didn't exist when you did your podcast. Now it does. It was you. Thanks, man.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it is all me. I'll bow towards your God. Yes. Let me bask in it.
All right.
I'm not seeing you guys bow. Come on, dudes, play along.
I'm bowing inside. Inside.
It's the lag on the internet. You
That's
can't
what it
see
is.
it.
That's it.
Sorry.
Heathens, we will feel your God Emperor's wrath. Let me tell you.
All right, so we're right around the hour mark already, and I sense
All
that
right.
I could turn the key in the back and wind you up, and you could go for another hour. So let's just say, wrapping up the whole discussion a little bit. Give me 90-second wrap up. If nobody listens to anything else that we've talked about so far, what do they need to know about gaming on Linux?
Use NVIDIA, support companies that actually produce Linux games. If they make promises for Linux games and don't deliver, do not give them money. Do not actually buy something until they come out and say, this is a Linux version that you can download and play right now. Because otherwise, you get companies like Larian and Arrowhead who will take money with the promise of a Linux port and then never deliver, which is a huge problem. This is happening a lot with a lot of the Kickstarter back games. It's happening just with like Gauntlet was on Steam pre-order. But gaming on Linux is a very real thing. You can do it. It doesn't take a lot of effort. You can install Steam on most major distributions. They have installers for it, and it will, for the most part, work out of the box. So it's pretty frickin' tits.
So
I wholeheartedly recommend it.
In the early days, I often liken computers to cars, right? So in the early days, there was no difference between a car owner and a car mechanic. And in the early days of computing, there was no difference between a computer owner and a programmer. In the early days of Linux, there was no difference between a Linux user and a developer. In terms of gaming on Linux or Linux in general, you're the Fedora guy. Chris here is actually a certified Fedora ambassador. So we got two Fedora gods on the show. If I'm just a regular guy, have we reached the point where you don't have to be a computer expert to game on Linux?
Absolutely.
Yes.
There is, installing Linux is quite literally as simple as clicking a couple buttons after popping your flash drive or your ISO and getting Steam installed. You can literally just Google, how do I install Steam on insert distribution of choice? And the first result is basically all you need to do. Log in, start downloading games, and start playing. That's really it.
Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
I would agree with everything he said. The only thing that I would say, in my opinion, the state of Linux gaming is back where we were when Diablo first came out for Windows. It's there, it's possible, but it's not optimized yet.
Oh,
So-
I wouldn't even say that. I think that's a faulty analogy, because it's certainly here. There are lots of good games on Linux. I will forever point to the Borderlands series as Linux
Oh, yeah.
games done correctly. It's just a matter of getting more people on board and getting more people using the platform, so that there
Which is
is
why
actual
I said-
there is financial and monetary incentive for people producing Linux games.
Sure. Which is why I said that it feels like the market is where PC gaming was when Diablo and Diablo 2 first came out. It's there. We can do it. It's not a big problem. But I think that we still need, not just users behind it, but we need some developers to get behind it too. And once that happens,
Absolutely.
once that happens, the ball will roll and everything will be. It'll change the world, I think.
So we're
the-
at that tipping point, you think, or we're close to it?
I think
We're
close.
certainly close to the tipping point. Really, November seems to be the make or break period. So we'll see.
All right. I'm
It'll
gonna
be interesting to see.
I'm going to call that part of the discussion over because poor Seth hasn't had anything to say for nigh on an hour now because he's just not a gamer. And also because we have a whole other sponsor that I have to tell you about, and I totally forgot. I'm not used to having two sponsors. Forgive me for being a bad host. Let me tell you a little about some guys who approached me a couple of weeks ago, months ago, sometime in the recent past, and say, hey, we want to be on your show. And I said, that's great. That's flattering, and I appreciate it, but I don't do ads for people. I don't know their stuff. I said, here, have a free login, try it. So I did. DigitalOcean.com. It's hosting plus, right? So it's not just a shared hosting provider like HostGator or HostMonster or something like that. It's a full-on server that you own in the cloud. It's cloud-based. It's the DigitalOcean. You spin up what they call droplets, and they're super fast. They're running a KVM, so you get hardware, your direct access to the hardware, and everything is built on SSD drives. They're super fast. In fact, you can from start to log in is about 50 seconds. I picked, they have all sorts of one-click installations, so I picked the Drupal button. So I clicked the button, and it was literally about 54 seconds between the time I clicked the button and the time I logged in, and had a full Ubuntu install with Apache configured and PHP configured and Drupal installed and a database created, and I was ready at the login prompt. And it's pretty amazing that they can do that fast. But it's also, each of their machines has full gigabit access to the internet, to the webs. So you got plenty of speed there. All the machines are hex core machines running dedicated ECC RAM, so they're super fast. Everything is it's reliable. Their job is to make you look good. And if you're not just a regular server guy, but you're a developer as well, they have an entire back-end API, so you can spin up your server and not have to be a server manager. You can use their API to manage your app online. So they have their various cost things. Their low-end model, if you just want to check it out, you spin up a machine, you get half a gig of RAM. It's a one-core processor, 20 gigs of storage space, and 1 terabyte per month of transfer. That's only $5 a month for that. The next one up that most people, that's probably going to be the middle of the road, is for $10 a month. You get a gig of RAM, a one-core processor, 30 gigs of storage, and 2 terabytes a month. If you want to run a blog, a web server, certainly not a video-hosted podcast, but if you're just a regular user, that $10 a month thing is probably going to be right for you. But you can go all the way up even more, and you can see these prices are a little more than shared hosting, but not super expensive. But the neat thing is, if you use the code EverydayLinux, or if you use the link on our show, elementop.com/DigitalOcean, you get a $10 credit. So you buy that $10 machine, you get a $10 credit. Essentially, you get a month free to check it out. You don't like it, you cancel it, you walk away, no harm, no foul. They believe in their product that much that they're going to put their money where their mouth is. If you want to do the low-end guy, the $5 a month, when you get 2 months to check it out. So I fired it up. I tried an experiment just to see what would happen. I typed in, I loaded up a Fedora install. I typed in RPM install. I can't even remember the command now. I'm so far out of Fedora. Anyway, I installed the GNOME desktop. Over 1,000 different packages, huge, giant squids coming out of the server all over the place. That whole thing was done in like 4 minutes. Bam. I now had a GUI login on a server, which, by the way, is not a good idea. Please don't do it. But I just did it to test. And I tried to... Go ahead.
I was just gonna say RPM compresses the crap out of their packages. It's all ZMA2 XZ compression. Actually, I did want to correct you on one thing though. KVM doesn't give you direct hardware access. It's all done in software. It's just highly optimized, and there are a lot of kernel hooks to allow close to hardware access, but it's not quite.
Thank you for the correction. I was under the impression that the KVM hypervisor gave you hardware access. So that's not DigitalOcean's talking points. That's mine.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, well, that's not important. I corrected you. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I expound on the difference between KVM Zens and different virtualization technologies, but this isn't everyday virtualization. It's everyday Linux. Yeah. So
I appreciate you butting into my ad, though, because I'm kidding. I'm pretty much done there. Check them out. They're I wouldn't bring them to you if I didn't believe in the company and the product. So that's what I have to say about that. And now let's talk a little bit about the news of the week, because Seth went through all the trouble to find the stories. We have to talk about it. And of course, this is the Everyday Linux show. We got to talk about Windows 10 right off the bat.
Oh boy. Ugh.
Yeah,
Of
well,
course.
it has been out for a month, and so I found this article on CNET that talks about the market share. And Windows 10, they're up to like 5% of the desktop market, so that puts them ahead of Mac OS. And of course, they dominate all of our Linux hopes and dreams. Not quite up to Windows 8 yet, and they're still nowhere close to Windows XP. But 1 month in, Windows 10 has captured over 5% of the market share. So,
Well, it's not,
yay,
not
Windows.
hard. It's not that hard to do, and it's almost a forced download.
One of the
Yeah.
probably the single most often asked questions I get from my non-technical friends is, should I update from Windows 8 to Windows 10? And my response is, it can't be worse than Windows 8. And I've done it on my own kid's laptop. It had Windows 8 on it, to put Windows 10 on. It was a non-event. It was fine. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. When you're pushing it that hard, you really can't make hay out of desktop numbers. But it's there. It's fine. So far, as far as I know, it hasn't killed anyone.
Well, and
Yet.
the thing that
Bum, bum, bum.
impressed me was Windows XP still has 12% market share, and that
Yeah,
is
that's-
just under the combined for Windows 8 and Windows 8.1. So people
I'll-
are
I'll tell
loving
you.
their XP still.
I'll tell you why that is. China.
Yeah, people
are-
who don't
there
have
are-
legal copies to begin with.
Yeah, there are so many pirated copies of Windows XP in China that for sure is why those XP numbers will exist until the end of time.
China and Russia, both. So
Yeah.
the next story up, which is kind of fascinating to me, because this is Amazon playing into their strengths in that they've got this whole storage network built. Amazon Prime goes offline.
Yes.
Yeah, basically they are kind of seeing because Amazon's digital their video offerings are not as strong as Netflix. So one of the ways that they're kind of differentiating themselves and just to kind of expound the benefits of Prime is you can download something to watch it later. So you don't necessarily have to have a collection. You can click a download button, like especially in the iOS or Android app, and say, hey, I want to watch this movie when I get home, but I'm going to use the Wi-Fi at work so I don't burn through my data plan. Download, and then when you get home, you can watch it. So I thought it was kind of cool. Amazon Prime for a lot of people who have metered internet connections, you can hang outside Starbucks or McDonald's or work or something like that, and you can get your digital fix on for when you get home. So I think it's kind of cool. And it
9
addresses
hours
a need.
later.
It was nice
Yeah.
of you to put that in that order: Starbucks, McDonald's, work. But let's be honest, everybody's doing it at work. This is only on mobile, Android, iOS, and the Fire TV, which is kind of odd there that one is stuck in the mix. That's the thing that is probably the most connected, right? Is connected to your home network. But I'm
Right.
guessing that they're going for the TiVo effect. They want you to be able to just download a bunch of stuff and watch it when your power's out.
Possibly. Do any of you guys have a Fire Stick? I don't know if it has like a USB port or something.
Now,
you
there's
can
only
play
like
Flash
19
with.
people in the world that have a Fire Stick, and we're not one of them.
Well, but
Well, then you're
also-
doing it wrong.
Yeah, also this plays into like the people who have satellite, because a lot of those, even though you're metered and you have a cap, a lot of them offer an unlimited option, like over the night hours when the usage is down. So you could program it to say at midnight, download these movies, and then so it doesn't count against your daytime data cap, but you have it for later.
I actually
So-
have that exact setup. I get unmetered bandwidth in between 2 and 6 a.m.
And it
but
also
I don't know,
helps to the prime time issue with anybody who's got Netflix knows that the time that you want to watch Netflix is not the time that you can watch Netflix. Between 7 and 10 p.m. Eastern time is the worst time to be watching Netflix, and it's less so for Amazon in my experience. But there's still the whole bandwidth thing. So the idea of time shifting your download so that you can watch your content when you actually want to watch your content. It's kind of brilliant, and Amazon has built their business on having servers all over the world and just having virtually infinite storage. So it plays right into them. They can do what Netflix can't. Netflix doesn't have the infrastructure to do that. So I really think this is going to be a winning thing. I do both. I would say my viewing is 70-30 Netflix versus Amazon, but this could shift it.
And interestingly enough, at least early on, Netflix was storing their video content on S3, which meant that no matter what, you were paying Amazon for your service. I'm curious what the actual limits of this downloading option is. Does it let you only download one or two movies, or is it just like you can fill up your drive with downloaded stuff from Amazon Prime?
I've done this. I've actually done this already.
Hmm.
When it came out, I already pulled down. I pulled down what was it? 5 episodes of what was that? What is that movie or that TV show? Not Lost Girl, but
It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to know. Name
Yeah.
something.
same.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, Orphan Black.
Okay.
That's it.
I know
downloaded
about
5
Orphan
episodes.
Black. You want to talk about Orphan Black? Let's talk about Orphan Black.
Well, I
Are
just
you
started the
are you a
series,
member of the Clone Club?
But
You
anyway, I
downloaded the
just
whole
started-
series?
I downloaded 5,
Okay.
and it worked without a problem. Didn't even hiccup.
See, what I would
So-
love to be able to do is like download all 15 seasons of something and store it off to the side and have that just ready to chew on anytime I want.
I think Amazon would probably put the kibosh on that though, because that is a fairly well open vulnerability for at least pirating videos off of their service, and they have their partnerships that they got to protect. So I mean, it's a cool thing. It certainly sets them aside from Netflix. But as a non-Prime customer, because I live in Canada, where that service is kind of, well, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe Ben will be super into it because he loves the Amazon Primes.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to find out. I didn't have a chance to dig into it to see if it's an encrypted blob on the phone
It's
or
got
my
to be.
tablet, but
It's-
It
it's gotta be
almost
some way.
universally is,
Well,
I-
and I didn't put it in
Does-
here, but there's a company that is caching Netflix for you. You pay a $7 a month fee, and what happens is you can program it to download stuff, but in order to play it, you have to have an authenticated Netflix session. So you would need to be logged into Netflix to play
Yeah.
it, and if they pull it off, if Netflix pulls it off their catalog, you can't play it at your house. If you cancel your Netflix membership, if the DRM baked in would prevent you from playing it. But so Netflix,
what, I was going to just quickly say, what's the over-under on those guys getting a cease and desist in the next 6 months?
well, actually, it's one of those things that Netflix knows they're there, but it's kind of like Netflix has been public. We're not going to do this, but if you want to do it, and there's licensing because you have to have a Netflix membership, and then you have to have a membership to this company. So it basically doubles the price of your Netflix subscription. And
I don't know.
I couldn't
No,
find
sorry,
it.
continue.
If you're a full-on cord cutter, that double price may be totally worth it to you. Most people pay for, not most people. Everybody who has a TiVo pays for that TiVo, right? So this is bringing the
Yep.
TiVo to the offline guys, the cord cutters. So I think it's an interesting idea. We'll just have to see what happens with it.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me a bit of that whole Aereo mess. So we'll see. Which was perfectly legal until the courts decided that it wasn't because it was too good an idea.
Aereo broke
but-
my heart. It's like we created this entire Rube Goldberg contraption just so we could be perfectly legal every step of the way. And the court said, yes, you are perfectly legal every step of the way. But when you add up all those legal steps, it's an illegal process. Sorry, you're gone.
Yeah, no, we're gonna
That was
change the
sad.
rules because it's too good an idea, and we're in the pockets of other folks.
Thank you,
so
Supreme
I guess
Court, for
what's
not
what's
doing
next?
anything. So, surprise, surprise, Windows doesn't want you to use anything but their own browser.
Shock.
Yeah, to me, this is a non-issue. I just want to put it out there. If you're a Microsoft fanboy, it's a non-issue. If you're a Google fanboy, then this is another example of Microsoft using their monopolistic powers to keep everybody else down. But Microsoft is only a monopoly on the desktop and has, usage points out the desktop is becoming a smaller and smaller percentage of overall network use. And so, yes, Microsoft is like, hey, it's our operating system. We really want you to use our browser. So if you search for Google Chrome, one of the links at the top is going to be Google Chrome sucks in Windows 10. But, you can still do it. I don't have a problem with this, but it was just some fear mongering that, some people are throwing up. Google's like, hey, we do this on our stuff and it's okay, but you can't do this on your stuff. That's
So
wrong.
this is the exact thing that Microsoft spent 10 years in court over in the 90s. And so they're going to try it again just for fun.
Oh yeah,
Well,
and you know what the best long-term solution for this is? Install Linux.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's one of the things. Again, it's not really a big deal because they're not. It's not a monopoly. I mean, I don't. Yes, they have the overwhelming desktop market share, but so what? So yeah, and it doesn't like prevent you from installing Firefox. It just says, hey, our browser's better.
It's FUD though. It's information warfare, and to some degree, that's even worse than stopping people from outright installing a piece of software on their system, because it's allowing misinformation to exist in the wild and then spread, which I think is criminal. But that's what the courts decide ultimately.
But by this time, people who are Firefox users are going to use Firefox. People who are Chrome users are going to use Chrome. People who are Safari users are just stupid, and everybody else uses Internet Explorer. It's not like some Firefox users are going to go, oh my gosh, I can't use Firefox anymore. They're going to say, oh, whatever.
No. But grandma and grandpa are going to see this, and they're going to ask stupid questions, and they're going to base their purchasing decisions based on bad information, though. And again, if you repeat something enough, people will believe it as fact, despite the fact that it can be provably false.
I don't know. Microsoft repeated many times that Vista was a solid OS, and nobody believed that.
I mean, okay. To be fair, I'm probably going to lose some Linux cred after the first couple service packs.
It was actually quite fun. Yeah.
It was on par with Windows 7 because they basically ripped everything but the UI out and replaced it with Windows 7 code.
I've said that many times. Windows XP actually became a very solid operating system. It was just released too early. Let's move on to the next one. This is an interesting story that that we're probably going to have a guest on in the near future to talk about. But is the FCC trying to make sure that you can't hacksaw your own what's the thing? Router. That's the word.
Yeah, your wireless router.
Home gateway.
Yeah, no, there was a legitimate issue where the FAA was concerned with wireless in the airport causing, legitimate issues. And so they contacted the FCC. And of course, the FCC heavy-handed came down, and basically their document says you can't change the settings on a Wi-Fi device. And then people are trying to comment, but it's kind of hard to comment when the FCC takes their servers down for maintenance. So they've extended the comment period and then the follow-up comment period. And the thing they want to do is they want to prevent the power output to the antennas. But because, again, people who are idiots in this field are writing specs for this field, they don't know what they're doing. The unintended consequence is going to be the browser or the router manufacturers are going to say the easiest way to comply with this is to lock it down and eliminate, DDWRT or any other type of third-party aftermarket firmware replacement for a router. So,
and so they're looking at maybe doing some sort of UEFI locking down of the BIOS and making that law. That's the thing that bothers me. It's not a recommendation. They're thinking that they might want to make this federal U.S. law that you have to lock down these things. And I admit I am part of the problem, right? So I'm running DDWRT on my machine. The default value for the antenna output is 71 milliwatts. I have it cranked up to 750 milliwatts so that I can actually get signal upstairs in my bathroom, because you need Wi-Fi when you poop, obviously. And so I'm part of the problem there. And if you can crank that up to 1 watt of power, that is certainly way more than you might want somebody to have who happens to have a condo at the end of a runway. But because a few people might do it, the desire here is to codify law so that a few people can't be bad neighbors.
Now here's the tinfoil hat perspective on that. So there was I think there was a DEF CON talk a couple weeks ago about some guy who came up with this device that is essentially a physical wireless proxy that uses open bandwidth to basically transmit a wireless signal across many miles to something connected to a standard 802.11 wireless network. The guy demoed this, and then 2 days later, all messages from that on the website were shut down due to some unspecified complaint from the U.S. Department of Defense. So I think what might be happening is they're trying to crack down on people trying to create devices like this that would stop the government from tracking you.
Yeah, and if you also want to go, Edward Snowden route, if the government can make it a law that you have to encrypt firmware so that you can't modify it, that also means that you can't detect and bash their listening devices that they are putting in the chips.
Another nitpick: it wouldn't be a UEFI thing on these sorts of routers because they're all MIPS boards.
Well, I said UEFI like.
It's all done in the bootloader because you don't actually need a BIOS for these machines. The Linux kernel that runs DDWT and actually any of these other operating systems that exist on these wireless routers are more than capable of handling BIOS level tasks.
Right. So the idea is and the fact the technology doesn't exist. So this would be government fiat defining the creation of technology, the implementation of that technology, and the inability of any customer any company who does business in the U.S. to opt out of it, and the inability of any customer who resides in the U.S. to opt out of it. So for those reasons, technical aside, that is a governmental overstep that's a bad idea. And I recommend that you go to savewifi.org and at least educate yourself on the process.
But Mark, it's okay because we're still the land of the free, right?
But until
it's fine because your Wi-Fi router will still kill your sperm count.
Yeah. Well, I've got my 3 kids. I'm good. In fact, that would save me a surgery. That would be fun.
Then you can speed that up with a microwave. I'm just saying.
Yeah. That hurts. I'm just saying. Not that I've tried it. I'm just assuming.
It hurts so good. My God, it hurts so good.
So most of them won't go with the door open. So never mind. Moving right along.
Not with that attitude, it won't. But I think you got one more story you want to take a stab at?
I think I'm done with the news, but this week in history, what happened, Seth?
Okay, we're going back in the internet time machine. George Stibitz pioneers the first remote operation of a computer September the 9th, 1940. So pre-World War II, from an American perspective, we were already figuring out how to remote into computers. So I don't know what he would be doing at this time, but maybe he threw a punch card, figured out some way to throw a punch card across the room. But I mean, he pioneered it. So you can think of George Stibitz every time you are remotely accessing a computer or server.
So this would be probably the first instance of a dumb terminal or something like it, where you have some sort of thing set up. You're not actually punching cards, but yeah, that is way the heck back there that we were trying to figure that out. If
only there were some repository of information where we could look up and see exactly what he did. Yes. I didn't. I just found
he coined the term digital. Apparently, I'm looking at the Wikipedia article for George Stibitz right now. So.
Yay, interesting. Wikipedia. If you can't trust anonymous strangers on the internet, who can you trust?
Well, remember, I think it was Abraham Lincoln.
They cite their sources. So
yeah, Abraham Lincoln said, "If you can't trust strangers on the internet, who can you trust?" That's if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Well, he's a vampire, so don't believe him, anyways.
Spoiler alert! Gosh.
That might have been spoilers if you haven't finished reading Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, but the book's been out for 7 years now.
Yeah, what is the statute of limitations on spoilers? I mean, if I tell you that in Crying Game he's a she, is that a spoiler for something 20 years old?
No, she is a she.
Yeah, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I gotta get your terminology correct. Just address them by the gender they prefer to be called by, dude. That's just how it works. Be polite.
In 1940, Stibitz used a teletype to send commands to the complex number computer over telegraph. So use a telegraph line.
Well, that actually makes perfect sense to me because telegraph is binary. Morse code is binary, so that's brilliant. Makes perfect sense.
If you want a bit of additional cool shit to look up afterwards, go check out the Victorian Internet. That was kind of neat, where it was an entire network of telegraphs of people just transmitting messages and information back and forth.
All right, so Jordan, other than LinuxGamecast.com, do you have a favorite site on the web or something that you'd like to point our listeners to?
Yeah, sure. You can head on over to Pornhub.com. No.
Do that at work. Make sure you go to work to do that.
Oh yeah, no, just go to the playground, whip out your tablet, and just go to Pornhub. It's perfectly healthy, man. Just not in public. Not really featured anywhere else but linuxgamecast.com. You can find me, on my Twitter, Google Plus profiles at the Printing Fool on Twitter, plus Jordan's Fung on Google Plus. But beyond that, yeah, most of the crap I do is on Linux Gamecast, and occasionally this podcast.
Yeah. So that means you're planning on coming back. That sounds like occasionally means more than once.
I have no idea. You guys gonna have me back?
You think I'm going to invite you back after this fiasco?
Have you had enough punishment? Are you not entertained?
All right, so Seth, what do you have for your show closing spectacular in the Dev Random section of the show?
Okay, I wanted to amp up the random because it had been a while. So if you go over to zombiepationswithan.s.com, the 100% free dating and social networking site for zombies and zombie lovers. You can find
I'm sorry,
zombies.
we prefer to be called necrophiles. Thank you very much.
Yes, you can find zombie. Maybe you're a toxic spills zombie or a mutated virus zombie or a radioactive meteor zombie. So,
does it have to come down to classifying? Do we always have to put people in categories? Can't we just be undead?
But come
Yes.
on, people like what they like, and the undead likes what the undead likes too. So, and even if you're a zombie hater,
if they're sentient undead, your average skeleton zombie's not gonna say much. Liches, ghouls, ghasts. Wow, I'm showing my nerd cred here. Whatever. I got my AT&T. I got my AT&T monster manual like right there. I can just start spouting off.
So do I. I'm right there with you. It's right there.
Yeah.
I'm
Right
caught in
around
a
the
nerd crossfire. Somebody help
wait,
me.
okay, hold on. Is this the original? Is this the original monster manual, or is this like version 2?
Uh,
I grew
no,
up on
second.
the original.
This
So,
is the DM3R, not the.
This is the binder, man. The binder.
Oh, okay. Then see that's too new school. You're not old school enough for me. I reject you and substitute a reality of my own
buddy,
making.
I will kick your ass at Moldvay Basic D&D. Bring it on, Cupcake.
Is anybody else
Yeah.
excited about Spielberg's rendition of Ready Player One coming out?
Should be interesting.
intrigued. I'm intrigued.
I mean, as long as Indiana Jones doesn't show up, I might go see it.
I don't know. He did such a great job whenever he gave the early universe of Star Wars a run for its money. So I don't really know.
And
But yeah. So
interesting-
anyway, that's zombiepationswithan.s.com for all of your zombie loving needs.
So if you hook up there and you become a zombie success story, let us know at elementop.com. Click the contact us button at the top of the page. That will send us a neatly formatted email that gets priority in my inbox. Or you can email us at edl@elementop.com. Or if you'd like your voice to appear right here alongside mine, you can dial 559-IAM-OP anywhere in North America, and that will call our voicemail, leave us a voicemail, and we'll play it on the show. We do this show for you. We appreciate what you have to say, and other than mocking your grammar, we do actually take your comments into consideration. We appreciate it. Jordan, thanks for hanging out with us. Any
No
final
problem.
words?
Final words. We at Linux Gamecast do not recommend the use of cocaine, as it may result in blindness and additional superpowers.
All right, because you don't want to get too many superpowers. Eventually, you explode.
That is actually one of your superpowers. It's just exploding.
Cool. But you can only do it once. That's the problem. I used to,
Yeah.
when my kids were really annoying me, I would say things like, if you don't stop that, I'm going to eat your eyebrows. And the problem is I can only do it once, so make it count.
Clearly, you or your children don't understand how eyebrows work. So, I'm gonna leave that at that. I don't consider myself a particularly intelligent man. I think I know how eyebrows work.
Well, if you pull out the whole root system and everything. Anyway, moving on. Thanks for hanging out with us, Jordan. We appreciate it. You're welcome back. I'm not going to say anytime. You're welcome back. We have your people call my people. We'll do lunch. Chris, Seth, it's great to have both of you back. Chris, thanks for making the Herculean effort to get connected in whatever way you can. Those 2 tin cans and a string you strung up actually worked pretty well. Thanks for being with us. Listener, thank you for hanging out with us. We look forward to talking to you next week. But for now, that ends this episode of Everyday Linux.
Laters.
Take it easy.
Peace out, y'all.
Word to your mother.
Or
All
to
right.
your mother.
Leave my mother out of this, man.
We're the West Coast mother-loving G's because you love your mothers. No, because we love your mothers.
Whoa.
Okay, YouTubers, people watching on the pluses. Thanks for hanging out with us. I'm cutting you off now.